Good morning. Today we're going to talk about polygons on the coordinate plane, and we're going to talk about how to utilize the coordinate plane to show information, how to plot vertices and to connect those vertices to create polygons. And then we're going to talk about how you can find lengths of line segments when you're looking at the coordinate grid. Now the first thing you need to understand is that, if you need to, by the way, pause and put in your topic and essential questions. The first thing, though, as we're looking at this is an example of a coordinate plane. Notice that it has 4 quadrants. There's a quadrant here, 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 and here. And we call that as quadrant quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. A coordinate grid is basically 2 number lines, a vertical number line and a horizontal number line. The horizontal we call the X, the vertical we call the Y. You will have numbers that are plotted onto your coordinate grid, like these ones. Now, what you probably are used to dealing with is positive numbers, like these ones, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this would be in this quadrant, quadrant I. Gosh, why do I keep saying I? Sorry. Quadrant 1. This is 1. They're Roman numerals, and it's Monday morning. Quadrant 1, you would have all positive numbers. So any number that you would plot in there would be a positive number. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, is over here on the number line, we have negative numbers. We have -1, -2, -3, -4, and so forth. So everything in this quadrant, quadrant 2, would have a positive number in the Y, but a negative number on the X. Now, we would also have negative numbers down here. And anything in this quadrant, quadrant 3, would be a negative on the X and a negative on the Y. And then finally in quadrant 4, we would have a positive Y, or a positive X and a negative Y. Now let's look at what an ordered pair is. This is an ordered pair. Now an ordered pair has 2 numbers. One represents the place where the point is located on the X, and one represents where it's located on the Y. So when you find those coordinates together, you have a vertex or a point, and that's where you find it located. So for example, in this one, we would go over to 1, up to 3, and you always want to go first over and then up. And some people like to think of this as you crawl before you walk, or you dribble the ball before you shoot. Okay. You could also the airplane runs down the runway and then lifts off. So any of those things are true. Now what's interesting, like I said, in 6th grade is we also go down. So you can think of also as a submarine. A submarine will just go over to the edge of the water and then it goes down. So we can also have negative numbers. So let's say that we had a -1, 3, positive 3. We would go, instead of going on the X this way, we would go on the X this way, so this -1, and then we would go up to 3. Okay? Now, we can have, we can do -1, -3, and we could have +1, -3. And let's list those, okay? So this one, let's call this A. That would be here. Let's call this B here. Let's call this C. That would be over to -1, down to -3. And then we would go over to 1, down to 3. This would be C, this would be D, and now we can connect them. And hopefully you see that we have created a rectangle by connecting it. So the polygon that we created was a rectangle. So let's try this again. We're going to go down a little further. Create that X line. Here's your X. Create your Y. Okay. Now this location right in the middle, we call that where 0, 0 is. That would be our origin. For this one, I'm going to go over 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now for the sake of this lesson, 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm only going to deal with quadrant 1 over here in the positive. So don't worry about necessarily numbering over here. I'm also going to number by 2s because it's a little smushed, and so I want to give myself enough space. Okay, now we are going to plot the following points. A is going to be 2, 4. B is going to be 3, 9. C is going to be 7, 8. D is going to be 8, 1. So you want to plot and label the vertices. Those are the points. And 2, connect the points to make a quadrilateral. Okay. So now that I've done this and I've got my quadrilateral created, I am going to now take and I'm going to now find these points and locate them, and I'm going to Okay. Sorry about that. Someone came to the door. Okay, moving back to this. So now let's locate these. Maybe you've got yourself caught up to where I'm at. So we're going to go over to 2, up to 4. I'm going to make a point. And we're going to call this A. Then we're going to go over to 3, up to 9. I'm going to call this B. I'm going to go over to 7, up to 8, and call this C. I'm going to go... What is that?
It's the t-shirt.
That's not for me, it's for Miss Simmons, 2 doors down. Sorry, there was another person at my door. I'm going to go over to 8, up to 1, and call this D. Now that I've got all my points located, I'm going to connect them. A to B, B to C, C to D, and A to D. Now, I don't have a rectangle, I don't have a parallelogram because my lines aren't even, but I do have a trapezoid or also a quadrilateral because all trapezoids are quadrilaterals. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the length of a horizontal or vertical line segment in a coordinate plane by using the coordinates of the endpoints. When the x coordinate is the same, the vertical distance between the points is the difference of the y coordinates. When the y coordinates are the same, the horizontal distance between the points is the difference between the x coordinates. So what this means is, if I were to have points, so let's do another one where we can show this a little bit better because it'll be easier if I have coordinates that are on the same line. So this is just simply labeling it. I'm going to go over to 46. I'm going to make another coordinate grid. Once again, I'm only going to use this one quadrant over here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm only using quadrant 1. In the future, we will use all of the quadrants through the first, second, third, and fourth, but for today we're just going to use that one. I'm going to have F, which is 1, 6, G, which is 7, 6, J, which will be 1, 2, and actually let's do this a different way. Let's do H first so we can connect it properly. 7, 2, and then J will be 1, 2. So once again, you have F is 1, 6, G is 7, 6. I skipped J. H is 7, 2, J is 1, 2. So let's go over and locate it. 1, 6. Remember, I go over and then up. This is F. Over to 7, up to 6. This is G. Connect. H, over to 7, up to 2. And J, over to 1, up to 2. Okay. So now I've got my picture drawn. Now what I can do here is if I wanted to find the length of the difference between, the horizontal difference between F and G. Remember, F is 1, 6, G is 7, 6, and I want to figure out what is the difference between this one and this one as far as the distance, the length. So I want to know what is the distance between this and this. Now clearly I could count. I could just go, okay, it's 1, 2, and count. But there's another way to do this where I look at my ordered pairs. Now in my ordered pairs, you notice these numbers are the same. So I'm going to ignore those right now, and I'm going to take these numbers that are different for my X, and I'm going to look at the rise, like how much it rises from this point to this point. So I'm going to take my biggest number, which is 7 on my X, and I'm going to subtract my smaller number, which is 1, and I'm going to see there's a difference of 6 units. There is a difference between this point and this point of 6 units. Or of, I apologize, this point and this point. I was looking at the vertical. It wanted me to look at the horizontal. So between here and here, I go 6 places. Now, once again, could you count? Yes, you could count. But we also sometimes cannot count, and so when we cannot count, we have to instead use this model where you take the numbers that are different and you take the bigger of those two and you subtract the smaller of the two. So that would be a way for us to figure out what is the difference of our length. Okay, so for tonight's homework, you are going to be doing the odds on your worksheet page. So if you have questions on this, make sure that you go back and redo the notes. Remember, it's very important that you always go over and then up or down. Remember, this is the coordinate grid. This is an ordered pair. It's the x value and the y value. We always plot and then we connect. And we want to make sure that if we have to find the distance between, or the difference between 2 points, that you take the bigger number, subtract the smaller number, and you want that second number to be the same. All right, guys, have a great day, and go back and pause these notes or email me if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.